Life changes in an instant. One moment you're fine, the next, someone else's negligence has turned everything upside down. And when that happens, you need fighters in your corner. NACE Law Group has been standing up for DC families for decades, taking on medical malpractice, wrongful death, and serious injury cases that others won't touch. While other firms rush to settle, NACE fights for maximum compensation. They know your family deserves justice, and they won't stop until you get it. If you or a loved one has been hurt by someone else's mistake, don't wait. Call NACE Law Group today. Visit nacelawgroup.com. That's NACE lawgroup.com. Hey, before we get to today's conversation, I have a quick favor to ask. CityCast is doing our annual listener survey, and it would really help us out if you took it. If you took it last year, thank you. We would be grateful if you took it again, since we can't use last year's data anymore. Please go to citycast.fm/survey to take the survey. It's only 7 minutes long. Yep, we timed it. That's citycast.fm/survey. When you take the survey, you'll also be eligible to win a $250 Visa gift card and some cool CityCast swag. That's citycast.fm/survey. Today on CityCast DC, it has been one intense week since Trump seized control of DC's police force and sent down the National Guard. In the days since, the city has seen arrests, protests, and real growing fear. WAMU's Alex Koma has been on the ground covering it all, and today he joins us to break down everything we know about what's happened so far and what's next for DC. Today's Tuesday, August 19th. I'm Bridget Todd, and here's what DC is talking about. Alex, thank you for being here. I know it is a very stressful time in DC. It's been about 1 week since Trump's launch of the National Guard into DC. What has happened over the course of that 1 week?
Yeah. At first, I think we were all trying to figure out, how much is this really going to mean for, MPD police operations in D.C. because Trump, of course, got up there at the White House with a ton of bluster, telling cops that they can do anything, whatever the hell they want, I think was the exact phrase. And so, you got to look at that and say, well, what really is going to change? And at first, we didn't see too much change. All these assertions from Mayor Muriel Bowser and Police Chief Pam Smith that they remained in control of the department, that they were merely going to be working alongside these new federal officers, and that fundamentally the things that they do every day would not change. And as the week went on, as the Trump administration became more determined to impose their will on DC, that's where you really started to see things getting a bit more chaotic, more frenzied, more federal agents in general, often wearing masks and not identifying themselves, grabbing people off the street, particularly focused on immigration arrests, and seeing the Trump administration trying to push the Metropolitan Police Department to cooperate more on immigration actions, which they have historically been very resistant to do. DC does have many sanctuary city policies in place, and that is kind of what prompted the legal battle we saw playing out at the end of the week, where the Trump administration was trying to insert their own designees above the police chief, which was sort of the red line for the mayor and the chief that they simply could not countenance. It has been a whirlwind, to say the least.
Do we know what those arrests have predominantly been for?
Yeah, the White House is touting these numbers. And of course, it's difficult to disambiguate, are they counting, just regular police arrests alongside all of their federal agents? Who knows? But from what they are saying is they're saying that something like 40-ish% are focused specifically on immigration actions. And that very much bears out with what we've been seeing. Have we seen more of MPD out and around doing more visible traffic enforcement? Yeah, definitely. They're touting that guns are getting taken off the street, but MPD does that all the time. So I think it's reasonable to say that, they seem very focused on, returning to an issue that has animated pretty much all of Donald Trump's political career, which is trying to sweep undocumented people off the street at any opportunity, increasingly just targeting anybody who just simply looks Hispanic or Latino, looks like they might be undocumented. We've seen many cases around the country of them not being particularly discriminating in checking people's legal status. And so here, we're seeing them casting a very wide net when it comes to immigration in particular. You're seeing ICE and Border Patrol, Customs and Border Protection agents alongside MPD at many of these checkpoints they've been setting up. I mean, really alarming stuff for people in the immigrant community here.
And I think given that so much of Trump's tough talk was about cracking down on crime, we know that undocumented immigrants don't commit crimes at a higher rate than anybody else. And so it makes me wonder, is he still holding that this is all about crime? Or is it really about, as you said, one of his big signature issues, cracking down on immigration, regardless of crime?
Yeah, it would be one thing if he had come out at that, press conference and said illegal immigrants are overrunning D.C. or whatever. That certainly wouldn't be uncommon. But no, his focus was on murders, on shootings, on carjackings, pointing to the infamous incident now of Big Balls being, beaten up in an attempted carjacking, the former Doge employee with the memorable moniker, shall we say. So, he's made this about crime. He said, I'm going to seek to help DC address these problems. I don't want to minimize DC's problems with violence. The city has it. But the places where he's sending the National Guard, these federal agents, it's just not where most crime occurs in DC. And it sort of gives the lie to, everything that he's been saying about this when you're just setting up, ICE patrols on U Street to try and find some, undocumented workers on their way to their bar or restaurant job. I mean, that makes it very clear what all of this is really about.
So I'm glad that you said that because anecdotally, I thought the same thing. I thought that so much of the presence that I saw over the last week was in neighborhoods that I'm not saying they have no crime, but certainly not neighborhoods in DC that I would say have high crime. What do we know about the location of where this kind of enforcement is taking place across the city?
Yeah, from everything we've been hearing, it really has not focused on the areas that see the most, drug dealing, shootings tied to that, murders in wards 5, 7, and 8. Upper Northeast, far Southeast, far Southwest parts of the city. Those are the places where you could imagine if the president wanted to, make this big show of cracking down and getting tough on, crime in DC, that is where he would send the cops and the National Guard. In fact, some of these communities want more police and presence on the streets. There's a great deal of dispute about whether that would really make a difference, but you could imagine one version of all this going down in which that is where the police go. Instead, there are areas that the president sees on a daily basis. It's, on the National Mall. You've seen many National Guardsmen patrolling, memorials because, those are such, rampant high crime areas. You see many of them at Union Station because that's been a place where there's been many homeless encampments over the years. And you can imagine the president having seen that and conflated it with this feeling of crime and disruption. They're just not in places that the city leaders would tell you that they're concerned about being as high crime neighborhoods. They're in places that, say, the staffers who work at the White House see regularly on a daily basis. It
almost sounds like you're suggesting Trump maybe doesn't even really care about crime in D.C. This is all some sort of a stunt. Could that be?
Yeah, far be it for me to be so cynical on your podcast. But yes, I think just about everybody here knows DC's not a state. We're easy to push around. We're an easy target. As Mayor Muriel Bowser had just said recently, you wouldn't see this happening in any other neighboring state. He couldn't do this in Virginia. He couldn't do this in Maryland in the same way. He can do it in DC, and that's why he's doing it here.
Remember that amazing little cafe you discovered last summer? With the perfect latte and the crazy view? Or that sweet hiking spot your friend told you about, but you can't quite remember the name. With Overlook Maps, special places never get lost again. Create personal lists of places that you've been and want to go. Build your must-visit list for your next vacation, your foodie favorites for date night, or your weekend getaways for when you just need to escape. Planning a trip with friends? Create a shared list where everyone can add their ideas. Visiting a new city? Check out lists from locals who know the real gems, not just the tourist traps. And here's the best part. No ads cluttering your lists. No one selling your data to advertisers. Just your personal collection of amazing places organized exactly how you want them. Overlook Maps. Collect, organize, and share the places that matter to you. Download free at overlookmaps.com. And check out overlookmaps.com/DC to see some of our lists and great spots on a map and in your pocket. Your places, your way. One of the things I've really been struck by is these images. I saw a video of somebody on, presumably on the White House staff or from the administration, taking a video of federal agents in decked out in their camo and their gear and their masks, walking with the monuments behind them. And it just really struck me how much this is opportunities for grand photo ops and videos that look cool and, things like that. It just really struck me how much this is about optics and not really so much about the stated thing they're trying to do, which is combat crime, in quotes.
Exactly. I mean, when you look at the mere fact of the National Guard's involvement in all this and the many, as you say, camouflaged, federal agents from ICE and DEA and DHS, this is about the appearance that they're putting the military on DC streets. Now, the National Guard really can't do much of anything. Up until recently, many of them weren't even armed. They don't have police powers to arrest people in most cases. So what is that really about? It's about sending the message. It's about taking a blue city that many of people in Trump's base associate with all of these negative stereotypes about majority black cities with black political leadership as being crime-ridden hellholes, and showing force in these instances. I think this especially plays into the immigration element as well. I was reporting on this incident in Mount Pleasant, which is one of DC's most immigrant-heavy neighborhoods, where ICE agents were videoing themselves ripping down a pro-immigrant banner. I got the video from neighbors with Ring cameras, and then, they just tweeted the video out themselves, showing really what this is all about, which is, sticking a finger in the eye for Trump's base to show this message. They're not doing anything so much as they are causing some trouble, and leading to more deportations of people that most people in DC would much rather see remain in this community.
I have a question about that incident in Mount Pleasant. I have only been hearing rumblings about this, and from the look on your face, you might even know where I'm going. Is it true that one of the agents took down that sign and replaced it with a sex toy?
As near as we can tell, yes. And I have to admit, this is one of the stranger things I've ever covered in my career. But these are strange times. From everything we know, this banner is up. It's been in the plaza in the middle of the Mount Pleasant community for a long time. I had photos of it from back in January of this year. I think it was up even earlier. So people knew that this banner was there. It's part of the community. It was noticeable when these guys were congregating around it and ripping it down. So there's this Ring camera video. That's what I have of it. You can kind of see what appears to be, shall we say, the sex toy in question being left behind. But I think maybe the best evidence that this was, not a coincidence is that, some neighbors, because this banner's so prominent, they saw these guys congregating. They're like, what the heck is going on here? They were not happy about it. They see them tear down. They were alarmed. People ran right up to it. And a dildo's sitting there that had not been there earlier. I mean, either that is one hell of a coincidence with someone swooping in at the last minute to leave a sex toy, or these guys are just, playing these juvenile jokes and pranks because they think this is all just, funny to them. This is all just a message to them.
Yeah, these are the people with the moral high ground to come into our city and tell us how to run it. I heard that they were going to be sending more National Guard troops from places like West Virginia, South Carolina, Ohio, which I have to point out, Ohio has cities that also have high crime. It's sort of interesting that they're like, oh, no, we have to send in National Guard troops from Ohio to deal with DC's crime problem. But that is beside the point. Are there going to be more National Guard troops from other states coming into DC?
Yeah, presumably, I mean, as many as we're getting close to 1,000 additional troops would effectively double the number of Guard troops in the city when you consider the roughly 800 DC National Guardsmen who are here currently. Who will these, guardsmen be commanded by? Will they shift under, I guess the DC, like there's a special task force that's run by the army. Are they going to be running things? We don't really know. As you say, these National Guardsmen are not patrolling the streets of the cities, that in the states that they're coming from. People in those areas would freak out. They would not like it. They would have some critical questions for the governors of those states that were involved. But easy for every other conservative politician out there that wants to show they're supporting the president to use DC as a punching bag in exactly the same way.
You mentioned that we had a court ruling that was sort of a victory for DC, but I'm using victory. It was something. We talked to Brad Moss on the podcast about this recently, who's a national security attorney. But I'm curious, do you think that we should expect more court cases when it comes to ICE and these ICE and National Guard deployments?
I think that anything's possible, especially because, the Trump administration generally has not shown much concern for following the law, rather daring, people to take them to court and try and prove that they're not, following the law versus actually trying to follow it. As you say, it was a very narrow ruling. It sort of leaves the status quo from earlier in the week that I described, where Pamela Smith, the chief of the Metropolitan Police Department, is calling the shots. It is not so much that the Trump administration is, signing off on every single order she makes. That's what had the mayor and the attorney general here so concerned, because that is not in the law. But what is to stop this, conflict from escalating further? What if the Trump administration are making requests of DC that they find so intolerable that, they feel that they simply can't agree to them? You're already seeing, part of what inspired that, push by Pam Bondi to put, more Trump administration authority over DC was trying to get them to cooperate more with immigration enforcement. This is something that is not going to go away over the course of the next 3 weeks. The judge in that case just sort of got them to call a truce for now, where things are just de-escalated a little bit, because if it were to continue to escalate, you could imagine a court battle that goes all the way to the Supreme Court. And so things are maybe calm on that front for now, but there's no guarantee that it will continue.
Have we heard much from the council and or Bowser on this recently? I know in the early days, Bowser was really saying we're going to be collaborating, da-da-da-da. Has she changed course? Like, what have we heard from DC's elected officials?
Yeah, she's maybe sharpening her rhetoric, slightly. She's been critical of the focus on immigration. She's been critical of the other states sending their National Guard to D.C. She's walking or trying to walk this very fine line where she is criticizing, the intervention on DC's autonomy and statehood, while acknowledging the fact that this is a mayor who has been calling for more police for years and years and years now. And so she's trying to spin this as like a good thing, even though I think everyone involved, up to and including people within the police department, acknowledge that these federal authorities are not really helping them in any way. Many of them are not trained to do this sort of work. Many of them, especially the more that they do this very visible, fear-inducing immigration enforcement, are counterproductive to many of their efforts. The council is getting a little more ornery, I would say. I think they're trying to support the mayor in her position, but I think that more and more you are starting to see them ask, what is the value of not antagonizing Trump? What is the value of trying to work with him when you give him an inch and he takes a mile time after time after time? I mean, this is essentially the outcome the mayor was trying to prevent by by, removing Black Lives Matter Plaza, by clearing homeless encampments identified by the president. This was the thing, taking over the police. He's done it. I mean, short of going to Congress and asking them to repeal home rule, which would be a very difficult proposition when you have Democrats that could filibuster this and throw up procedural hurdles. Short of that, truly the nuclear option, what is left for the president to do? I think more on the council are asking that question the deeper we get into all this.
That's the question that I had when this whole thing started. And I think it really shows the short-sightedness of playing ball with somebody like Trump. I do think that Bowser, something that I like about Bowser is that she has sort of two modes: defiant, I'm going to put Black Lives Matter Plaza out in front of the White House, and then more diplomatic. And I don't know, I think that we really see that her trying to flex the diplomacy muscle really hasn't avoided the outcome that we were all trying to avoid. So at this point, what sense would it make to continue playing nice with somebody who has no intention of ever playing nice with us?
Yeah, so much of the message from Bowser's camp about her strategy here is simply she wants to wait the president out. She's hoping that eventually his focus will turn elsewhere, away from D.C., and that's reasonable enough as far as it goes. He's not exactly a guy known for his attention span, and certainly he has waxed and waned on how much he, really cares about D.C. He was really, considering these more stringent measures at the start of his term. He loses focus as other things happen. It takes an inciting incident like the big balls getting beaten up to draw his attention back to this, right? So they're hoping if we keep this quiet, we try and pretend like we, really like this and we welcome efforts to make the city safe, blah, 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 we can ride out the storm. I get it. I get why she's trying it. She's fearful of losing her authority to govern this city. You don't want to be the mayor that, loses home rule after 50 years, taking a step backward away from statehood. So I understand. I just don't think that, we've got very much road left on that particular strategy when you saw, she's trying to offer an olive branch, trying to say, look, we're going to work with the feds. What does the attorney general do? She comes out with this order and says, no, you're not going to work with us. We are going to tell you what to do. And, they had to go to court to even push that back a little bit. I just see no reason to imagine why the administration wouldn't continue to try and push on this. They're getting, in many ways, the result they want, which is a ton of people focusing on this. Why would they stop now?
What do you think we can expect over the next coming weeks from MPD, ICE, all of these federal agents? What do you think?
Well, technically, this state of federal control of the police department is only supposed to go through the very beginning of September. So what we will really be watching is to see how much Trump adheres to that. He has already said that he plans to ask for an extension of his authority over DC's police. That would require going to Congress to secure that. I've seen some debate about whether or not that's subject to the filibuster or could be passed on a simple majority. If it is subject to the filibuster, you have to imagine that there would be enough Democrats to stop this. While you've certainly seen Democrats go along with, rhetoric about the city's crime being dangerous, as recently as 2 years ago when they overturned a DC law to reform its criminal code, citing similar concerns. You saw Democrats and Republicans agreeing on that, President Joe Biden agreeing on that. So, possible to imagine this continuing if, Congress it comes up for a vote on it. Also possible to imagine Trump defying the law and just saying, I'm going to unilaterally extend my control of DC police. He's threatened to do that too. And the National Guard situation is one that he has pretty much, uniform control over. The mayor does not command our National Guard. We are unique to any city in the country in that way. Since we're not a state, there's no governor to command the Guard. So he can tell the Guard to do kind of whatever he wants. Same with all these federal enforcement. You could maybe imagine a world in which he gives up control of police because he, fears that Congress won't let him. But he just keeps flooding our streets with ICE and DEA and FBI, Secret Service agents, the way he's been doing these last few weeks to make his point. So I think no matter what, it will be an uncomfortable few weeks for DC leaders and many of us residents.
I saw this image of a very drunk girl on the street being helped by maybe 20 different federal agents, right? FBI, DEA, Park Police. And kind of, as you said, is this really appropriate? I was just remember thinking, like, I have been a drunk girl out on the street and needed help. I don't know that I needed 20 federal agents helping me. Perhaps that is a bit much.
Yeah, I enjoyed seeing that video as well, because it occurred to me that it was like, well, now they're getting a real taste of what it means to be a DC cop on a Saturday night in DuPont Circle, right? I mean, that's really what the cops are doing in that part of town at that, time of night. Not the sort of high-minded rhetoric about, protecting the nation's capital and our federal monuments and all that. It's babysitting some people who have had one too many at Mad Hatter. So I hope they enjoyed, and I hope they're loving their time in our city.
Alex, thank you so much for being here and for covering all of this.
It was my pleasure.
And thank you to our newest CityCast DC neighbors, Emily B. and Ryan C. Here's what Emily B. said about why she became a neighbor. Because I love this city, and it's been very good to me since I moved here 16 years ago. Thank you, Emily. I genuinely feel the very same way that you do. Go to membership.citycast.fm to join. That's all for today here on CityCast DC. We know this is a weird, stressful time for DC, and we want to hear from you. CityCast DC's newsletter writer, Kayla, wrote a love letter to the DC that she loves, and it got me thinking, what are your favorite things about living in DC? Call our CityCast DC hotline at 202-642-2654, where you can leave us a voicemail love note, or really just anything that you want to share about this moment. That's 202-642-2654. And we will be back tomorrow morning with even more news from around the city. Talk to you then.